So we're going to come back and we will look at 6, 7, and 8 separately. And with those properties, I think we're going to have questions.
Commissioner, would you mind
Yeah.
if I interrupt for just a second
Yep.
and just ask you to make a quick comment, just that confirming that the two commissioners did actually not meet together during that break?
Correct. I had to meet first.
Yeah.
And then Commissioner Lee met second. We were not there at the same time, so that we were not conferring outside of this meeting. Right. Yes. Thank you for clarifying that for us. And so and maybe, I don't know what you discussed with the lawyers, but what I discussed is that if we go through, because we have such a unique situation where there was a fire 2 years in a row, that if we can determine, plus there was mitigation from those fires, things like fire breaks, fire retardant that was laid down, that if we can determine that there's intent for farming, but because of no fault of their own, they were unable to farm, but we can look for other indicators like seeding or fencing or other work that was done, that we can determine that if the farming didn't occur because of no fault of their own, but that there is an intent to farm, that we can approve an application. However, there has to be a determinant that there is intent for farming and that it didn't occur because of no fault of their own. Is that correct, Paul?
Well, I think largely, maybe I'll just make a quick comment here. As I've kind of dug into this issue, there is kind of this interesting dichotomy or a play between the statutory framework and then also like the standards of practice. And when Ms. Garcia was talking, I think her analysis, her communication with the state, I don't doubt, was along those lines, and that was in line, in my view, with the standards of practice. And the standards of practice, they do say that the Board of Commissioners can grant a waiver of the requirement that the land be actively devoted to agricultural use, which is why these parcels were withdrawn, if the owner submits proof that the land has met the production requirements for the last 2 years immediately preceding the tax year. So under the standards of practice, the applicants would need to establish that they actually met the production requirements in 2019 and 2020 in order to qualify for a waiver in 2021. And I think that's what Ms. Garcia was talking about, and I can see exactly why, because it says it right there in the standards.
But
The statute,
However,
on the other hand, describes it a little bit differently. And in the statute, it says that the Board of Equalization may grant a waiver of the requirement that the land is actively devoted to agricultural use upon an appeal by the owner. And it says if the land was assessed on the basis of agricultural use for the 2 years immediately preceding the tax year. To me, that's a big difference. Again, the standard said that you have to actually prove you've met the production requirements. And the statute says that you have to prove that you were assessed.
that we have the ability to issue a waiver if their land was assessed.
If the land was assessed on the basis of ag use.
Okay.
I didn't look into this independently, so I don't know if that needs to be looked at. But if the parcels were assessed on ag use in 19 and 20, regardless of production, then the board could, by statute, grant a waiver of ag production requirements.
so you're going 2019 and 2020 assessed.
Right. So if they were assessed on ag
taxes
use in
paid?
19 and 20, then the board could waive the ag production requirement in 2021, so long as their lack of production is not a fault of their own.
It's not a fault of their own.
I think the intent idea is rational, but I don't know that it,
But as long
I
as
don't know
we
that it moves the needle.
as long as we determine that it was at no fault of their own.
That's the criteria.
Okay, that's the
Now,
criteria.
again, there was a fire in 19, that's the testimony today. It's a fire in 19, a fire in 20. There was no fire in 2021. And so you'd be looking at those, possibly looking at the mitigation efforts.
That'd be the waiver.
Did that,
That would be the waiver with, if
If
we
you
determine that
find-
it's no fault of their own.
right.
Okay.
So I could see that, and I think that, you know, as we look at, because every parcel is just a little bit different too. So if we went down the lines where we saw that it was being assessed in 2019, 2020. Now we're not looking at production on those. We're looking, you know, although that, because that didn't happen, then there would be a waiver in 2021. The challenge is that in 2022.
You'd have to have production.
You better have production. Because if you don't have production, then I don't think you're going to find any one of us up here feeling like, you know, there's a way to move forward with it. But that's how I'm looking at it, is that, and I think though that you know, part of this as we look at it, Commissioner, is that. I think it would be appropriate for us to take them one at a time
I agree.
and look at them in the way of production and have them, you know, kind of explain that there was a fire. Now I get it. So you purchased some of the property in the middle of this, and there's no way that you can go back and show. And if there was any faulty issues or anything like that in the way of they were claiming in the past, there's nothing that I can really do about that. That would be something that you'd have to claim, you know, against an owner from the past, or we couldn't do. That's an issue that you'd have to kind of deal with. But anyway, I think it would be reasonable, Commissioner, Madam Chair, if we were to look at these one by one. And then go down through it with maybe an overemphasis to every single one that comes up here and talks about this. That when we look at the land, because as I look at the three different here, the first one, ma'am, I think there's a lot of work that probably needs to be done to see production on a land like that this year. You might have to be very creative.
Can I
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, can we have animals in the meantime? Yes.
Animals would
Okay,
work.
we
Yeah, so
are-
sheep
We
or
promise you that we're
or
gonna have
cattle.
cattle there this year.
There has to be receipts. There has to be, I mean, the other thing too is there's a little assessment on what the AUMs look like on a piece of property too. So, I mean, there's a lot that's involved with it.
So if
but-
you're going to put cattle there, make sure that you're documenting how many cattle you have, how many days they're there. If it's someone else's cattle, maybe have them sign a form that shows how many cattle were there and how long they were there, so that you can prove how many were there and how long they were there.
And how much money I made? Okay.
Yeah.
And how about llamas? Because I was looking into llamas.
I don't know about llamas.
They all have a certain
They work.
criteria.
There would be a criteria.
Okay.
5 llamas would equal 1 AUM. So if you needed 10 AUMs, you'd need 50 llamas.
50 llamas.
Okay.
Okay.
So you can look llamas, sheep, cattle. Each of them will have a different number, and just make sure
Where
that
can
you're
I
meeting
find
that.
that?
You
On
talk
the
with,
State Tax Commission website under the Farmland Assessment Act.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have?
so, on this one, then I'll make a motion that we approve the application on number 6 on our regular agenda.
I will second that motion.
I probably ought to put and state that it has been assessed in 2019 and 22, and there was a waiver. I don't know if that's the correct words, Chris, or anything like that. Maybe Paul.
Yeah, it was assessed in 2019 and
assessed in
2020.
2019 and 2020, and therefore we're granting a waiver to this one for 2021.
Because the lack of production was no fault of the owner.
Because, yes, there we go.
And I second that.
Okay, there we go. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes 2-0. Let's see, item number 7. Approve or deny application review of the Board of Equalization Farmland Assessment Act status for Chris Cowden. So, Mr. Cowden, we, from your previous testimony, you mentioned you have fencing and you did seeding and you have cattle on that property, correct?
Fencing and cattle. So here's
Fencing and cattle?
31 cattle on the property now.
Okay.
That's for both parcels?
Yes.
Or for more than your land? Does it include other people's properties?
Well, and you do have 2 parcels, right?
Yeah, he has 2 parcels, but I think it includes other people's property. That's why I need to calculate AUMs.
Yeah, so you will
So what we're doing,
calculate the 8.
right now there's 31 which have that area, but we're also adding.
You may ask him to
So the
come
Yeah,
to the
you probably
podium.
gotta come
You
to the
come up to
microphone.
the podium.
So the question I have is it grazing for Diane Garcia?
No, it's irrigated for. The property is irrigated for, is the land classification.
So what would the AUMs be?
So the AUMs for irrigated is 5.21 AUMs per acre. And the reason it's irrigated for is because that's what it was prior. So even though Evan Johnson grazed cattle, because you use it for grazing doesn't mean it changes the land classification for grazing. That just means that's what he chose to graze. But then the expectation is higher because it's higher quality ground than grazing ground. Does that
So
make
he's
sense?
gonna need 26, 27 AUMs.
You
Right.
have to calculate. I don't know.
And,
So
and
let
that
me
is,
address something else then.
Yeah.
The ground is not irrigated.
Does the land have water rights though?
Yes, it does.
So that's what they'll go off of. The state will go off of if the land has water rights. So, so basically what we're looking for is, was it assessed in 2019 and 2020 as agriculture? And we determined it was. Was the lack of production in 2021 due to no fault of your own? And from your testimony, we gathered that was from fire mitigation. But then, and we can give you an exception for 2021, but for 2022, you'll need to make sure that you've met the requirements.
It will be done.
Otherwise there will be a rollback.
and 1 cow is worth what on AUMs?
1 AUM.
It's 1.
So if you have,
You
a-
have 30 now, so
There's
you
31
would be
cows.
past that. You'd be past that.
So what I need to know, is it just for your property or is it like you guys are all grazing? everything?
I'm gonna expand the grazing by putting additional cows in there.
You'd have to have 26 on your property approximately.
Approximately 26 on your
So is it half? Is it, how do you figure out the calculation?
Okay, so what I keep asking.
I understand what you're asking me.
Okay,
but
so I'm
how do you
asking
figure
you
that?
what acreage? So is it just your 2 lots and nobody else is included in where these cattle are? Because your 2 lots are separate and there's a lot in between, right?
That's correct.
So are these cattle on just 1 lot and then you're gonna move them to your next lot, or are they on the lot in the middle as well?
Yes,
They're on
That's
the,
owned by somebody else?
yes.
Okay, so that's what, so it would be all that.
so what's the
acreage.
total acreage of
So,
those
Yeah.
so
3?
is it half? How do you calculate it? So you
So
take
you-
the acreage in half times
No, you
5
do the acreage times the AUM requirement times the 5.21. and then you have to meet
5.21.
Just over 50% of whatever that comes out to be.
Are all three properties 5.26 acres?
No, one of them's 5.84. I don't know what the middle one is. So one of his is 5.25 and the other is 5.84. And then I don't know what the other one is.
Do you know what the one between your 2 is?
5 1/4. So if it's cut in half, that's what I'm trying to understand.
No, so you're looking at, it's total of 16.34 acres, and you're gonna have to have 5.21 per acre, so it would be like 85 cattle.
But they only have to do just over 50%.
Oh, just over 50%, so,
If 50%'s 40, then they have to do 41. Because
Okay.
it says over 50%.
okay, so you'd need to expand it by about 10 cows.
Yeah, there's actually 20.
Okay.
Yeah, so there'll be 50. I mean, there'll be a lot of, this is just the first phase for us because we're actually adding additional cows this month. And so it's going to expand past that amount. And so we will meet that requirement.
Let me explain something.
I understand.
Okay, so we'll just do an easy scenario because I'm not really good at math. So say that the requirement was 40 head of cattle for those 3 lots, right? So they could have 40 head of cattle on there for 1 month, or they could have 20 head of cattle on there for 2 months. Or what? So he doesn't have to have all of those cattle on all the time.
Right.
Does that?
I mean, that would
does make
apply to
sense?
the previous
Yeah.
people as well. I think we were talking about all these llamas and stuff. That would have only been for 1 month,
Right.
right? So the other thing I'd
You
say
could have
is,
25 llamas for 2 months.
for purposes of these calculations, I'd probably say that the board probably doesn't agree to be bound by any of these quick
Yes.
math,
Right.
right,
Yes.
today. So,
But-
it is divided out, and most people don't have them
Right.
on during the severe winter months.
Right.
That's normal grazing practice.
So if we have 4 or 5 months and we have 30 cows on there, that would be sufficient.
That could.
Yeah.
By
Yeah,
far.
I mean, I would look at the math calculations, but as long as you meet the requirements this year and every year moving forward,
It'll be
you
done.
should be fine.
It'll be done.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we have a motion on item number 7?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we approve the application as stated in number 7 with the finding that 2019 and 2020 were out of their control due to fires, and so they could not meet production.
well, that 2019 and 2020 were assessed on the ag.
We're
value.
assessed under
We're
ag.
assessed, yeah, okay.
And at 2021.
We're assessed, even though there were fires, they were assessed under Greenbelt, and therefore they qualify for a waiver in 2021.
I will second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye?
Aye. That passes 2-0. Okay, now we're on to item number 8 for Scott and Michelle Strickland.
Commissioners, nice to meet you. Thank you for the time to let me put my case forward. My name's Scott Strickland. This is my wife, Michelle. Very shy, Michelle. Would rather sit back there. But this is my beautiful wife. And so we own the land described as 45639007. So it's commonly called Lot 7 on Lincoln Beach Road. Our situation is exactly the same as Mr. Cowden's and the Casperberos. And so, oh, he's back. For exactly the same reasons, and I
The whole summer to get to know them.
we've already exchanged phone numbers, so
There
it's
you
all
go.
good.
You can run
So-
cattle together, you can run fences together, you're
Right.
best
looking
friends by
forward
the
to
end of
it.
the year.
And so, yes, our situation is exactly the same as those. I have more information, but it's not needed because ours is the same. Along with what Mr. Cowden was saying, and that yes, and the question that Ms. Garcia was asking about, is it on adjacent or encompassing land where we're going to run the cattle? The answer is yes, and so we do. We'll be sharing those cattle until we get to a situation where we can manage it individual lots, I guess, or particularly Michelle and I would look at doing that in the future, but we'll be doing that. I do understand the AUM, the rule. I've already done the math on that and have that worked out, and that's quite doable for us. We've got 5.25 acres, and so for us that's 14 animals, 1 AUM, or 4 cattle for 3 months, or 3 cattle for 4 months, or whatever. So that's quite doable, and we can certainly.
Well, and the good news is that if you
Make
get
those.
cattle now, it'll take you at least 3 months to get an appointment with a butcher to be able to slaughter that, because those appointments are out 3 to 6 months, so
Well,
it should
not,
be good.
not if you name the cows, and then you can't really do
And that's a
that.
problem.
We did.
I'm just
problem.
joking, but that's correct. And so,
My children named them and ate them.
oh my heavens.
Did you tell them?
No, we did not do that. We did make an appointment. Typically, it was the third time that the sheep jumped the fence that we made the appointment at the butcher. And then you didn't feel so bad because you had to chase them down 3 times.
Right.
I'm Australian. I've only been here the last 5 years, having married Michelle then. Prior to that, though, I grew up on a you call it a ranch, we just call it a cattle farm, and I grew up on that and spent a lot of my life doing that. And so I know ranching, if that's the word, but on a larger scale. But so it's something that I'm looking forward to, and it's been a dream since we've been here. So that's.
I have a couple of questions for you. So
yes.
the land was assessed Greenbelt in 2019 and 2020.
Yes.
And you feel that the lack of production in 2021 was no fault of your own because of fire mitigation.
And other extraordinary and unanticipated circumstances. So the answer is yes to your
When did you buy
question.
the property?
August 2019.
Okay.
Okay.
When the fire hit.
Yeah, we were paying for it. We were signing it over the day that fire started. And I stood at our house where we live in Springville, and I saw the smoke starting, and I went, oh my heck, that's on West Mountain. And within 2 or 3 days, it had gone along over the back. And so, yeah, even though it may burn every year, not as bad as that, and not where it burned our property. It hasn't burned our property every other year that it burns. And so it burnt our property and everyone else's who were along that side.
Well, I lived on West Mountain for years and my property never burned.
Yeah, so yeah.
But I did max out my fire insurance.
But you were living there though, I guess.
I
Yeah,
did.
So we're not at that
Yeah.
point yet. So.
Yeah, we lived there full time until 2017. So sold it in July of 2017.
But you're sad?
Very sad. Miss it. My kids miss it every day. They miss ranching and farming very much. Okay. And obviously you have full intent on bringing it back into production this year.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
Okay.
Again, I'll make a motion that we approve the application, that we recognize that it was assessed in 2019 and 2020 for agricultural purposes. Due to fires, though, they were not able to meet production. Therefore, we're going to give them a waiver for 2020 with the
One for 2021.
2021, thank you, for 2021 with the full anticipation of them making sure to meet production this year.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
I'll second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That passes 2-0.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion. We are adjourned.
Yeah, come, we're adjourned. We're adjourned.
It was for the lot between us. They didn't,
Goodbye.
They didn't apply,
they never got the notice. So when they got, it went to another address, and so they didn't know about it until they got the notice to remove. So they never got the response from Diane's office. So that's the lot between us. Yep. So they had the same situation that we did.